The roar comes out of nowhere, a deep, guttural thunder that doesn't sound like it belongs on a public highway, let alone emanating from something the size of a small yacht. You hear the whistle of a 98mm turbo spooling up, winding tighter and tighter until it sounds like a jet engine preparing for takeoff. Then you see it, a flash of blinding yellow, a mountain of gleaming chrome, and 26 inches of spinning rubber. This is not your grandfather's Chevrolet Caprice. This is the Fire Donk, and it is about to commit a felony against physics. For years, the automotive world has looked down on the donk culture, these towering, big-wheeled classics, as all show and no go. But when Sean "Murder Nova" Ellington rolls this 1974 convertible to the starting line on Street Outlaws, Endgame, the smirk doesn't last long on his opponent's face. Because beneath that beautiful, boat-like exterior lies a 2,000 horsepower monster built to do one thing: humiliate supercars and shock the world. To understand the Fire Donk, you have to understand the man behind the wheel. Sean Ellington didn't get the nickname Murder Nova by accident. He rose to fame on the OG Street Outlaws by piloting a brutal, lightweight Chevrolet 2 Nova that decimated the competition on the gritty roads of Oklahoma City. Sean is a fabricator, a racer, and a perfectionist. But by 2022, the game had changed. The Street Outlaws franchise was spinning off into Endgame, a high-stakes competition where the biggest names in the sport, J.J. DeBoss, Ryan Martin, Kai Kelly, were forced to step out of their carbon fiber, purpose-built race cars. The rules of Endgame were simple but terrifying: you couldn't bring your $1 million Pro Mod. You had to build something new, something wild, and you had to do it fast. While his rivals were sticking to familiar chassis and proven aerodynamic shapes, Murder Nova went rogue. He looked at a 1974 Chevrolet Caprice convertible, a car that weighs over 4,000 pounds and has the aerodynamic profile of a brick wall, and saw a weapon. Why a '74 Caprice? Because it is the ultimate middle finger to convention. In the world of donk culture, which traditionally pairs high-rising hydraulics with flashy paint, speed is rarely the priority. But Sean saw potential in the absurdity. He wanted to prove that a land yacht could not only float but fly. The build was a family affair, documented with sweat equity in his shop. His wife Erin, his son Aidan, and his father Richard were all hands on deck, cutting, welding, and screaming at bolts that refused to budge. The clock was ticking on the endgame deadline, and the Ellington crew was attempting the impossible, making a 50-year-old luxury barge handle 1,400 horsepower on hard street tires. As the camera pans around the finished Fire Donk on Endgame, the casual viewer just sees a beautiful paint job and massive rims. But a true gearhead knows that the devil and the speed is in the details. The first clue that this is no parade cruiser is the chassis. Murder Nova knew the original frame of the Caprice would twist like a pretzel under serious power. So, the body was lifted completely off the chassis. In its place sits a fully adjustable, track-ready suspension system. Look closely at the rear, a 4-link setup with QA1 coilovers. This isn't for a smooth ride, it's for transferring the massive torque of the engine to the pavement without snapping an axle. Up front, tubular control arms replace the heavy factory steel, saving weight while allowing for precise alignment. The second clue is the wheels. Yes, they are massive 26-inch Corleone forged rims, towering high and covered in rubber band-thin tires. In traditional racing, big wheels are a handicap. They are heavy, they hurt acceleration, and they ruin gearing. But Murder Nova leaned into the handicap. He engineered the gearing in the quick performance rear end specifically to compensate for the rotational mass. He knew that if he could get those massive rims spinning without breaking traction, the inertia would actually help carry the car down the track like a runaway freight train. But the smoking gun, the real tell that this car is a sleeper agent of destruction, is under the hood. Buried deep in the engine bay is a Texas Speed and Performance LSX 427 cubic inch engine. It's topped with a massive 98mm precision turbocharger. This isn't a junkyard LS, this is a billet block, built to withstand 2,000 horsepower. For the endgame street hits, Sean dialed it down to a daily driver setting of roughly 1,400 horsepower. Think about that for a second. 1,400 horsepower in a car that looks like it should be cruising the boulevard with the top down and earth, wind and fire on the stereo. The clues were all there for the sharp-eyed viewer: the thick tubing of the roll cage hidden just below the windshield line, the massive Rosseler TH400 transmission tunnel taking up the front seat space, and the scream of that turbo spooling up every time Sean taps the throttle. Building a car like the Fire Donk is an emotional roller coaster, and Endgame captures the vulnerability that raw horsepower hides. There is a moment in the shop, just days before the car has to be loaded onto the trailer for the first race, where the pressure almost breaks Sean. It's not just about the money, though the cost of a billet LSX and a custom frame isn't cheap. It's about the legacy. In a clip from the Discovery series, we see the Ellington family standing around the shell of the Caprice. The wiring harness is a rat's nest, the cooling system has a leak. This is the clue phase turning into a crisis. Sean looks at his father, Richard, who has been turning wrenches with Sean since the OG Street Outlaws days. There is a silence in the shop that isn't filled by the usual rock music. Richard looks at the car, then at his son, and simply says, "You've built faster. But have you ever built anything that meant more?" That hits Sean hard. The Donk isn't just a race car, it is a nod to a culture outside of the traditional drag racing bubble. It represents a bridge between the world of 405 racing and the vibrant, flamboyant car scenes of the South. Murder Nova has always been the silent killer, the guy who lets his driving do the talking. But this car is loud. It's yellow. It's massive. It forces him out of his comfort zone. He confesses to the camera that he is terrified of looking like a fool. "If I roll this thing out there and it falls on its face," he says, "I'm not just losing a race. I'm letting down everyone who ever told me a big-wheel car could be fast." It is a raw, unguarded moment. The killer instinct is still there, but it is tempered by the weight of representing a whole new style of hot rodding on a national stage. You see him wipe the sweat from his brow, not just from the heat of the shop, but from the heat of the pressure. The truth of the Fire Donk isn't revealed in the fabrication shop, it is revealed on the asphalt. The final test comes when Murder Nova lines up against the competition. While the specific matchups on Endgame are chaotic, the truth of this car is best illustrated by the real-world legend that surrounds it. This car, Sean's specific build, went on to shock the automotive internet not just on TV, but in real life. The final truth of the '74 Caprice is this: it is a supercar slayer. In a viral video captured by that racing channel, the Murder Nova Donk, the very same car built in his garage, lined up against a Lamborghini Aventador SV. The Lumbo is the pinnacle of Italian engineering: all-wheel drive, a screaming V12, carbon fiber construction, and a double-clutch transmission that shifts faster than the human eye can blink. It is worth $500,000 and represents the peak of performance technology. The Caprice is a dinosaur. It is heavy, it is inefficient, and it rolls on 26-inch wheels that should, by all rights, snap in half under heavy load. When they hit the highway for a roll race, the Aventador gets the jump. The V12 wails, and the all-wheel drive digs hard. It looks like a victory for the exotic. But then, the Fire Donk wakes up. The big 98mm turbo finally fills the 427 cubic inches with enough compressed air to create a detonation. The nose of the Caprice lifts slightly, a miracle of engineering given the weight, and it begins to reel in the Lamborghini. Not just catch it, but annihilate it. The massive yellow barge pulls bus lengths on the raging bull of Sant'Agata. The LSX engine drowns out the sound of the V12 as Murder Nova drives past the Lumbo like it's standing still. The truth is that horsepower is the ultimate equalizer. Aerodynamics matter less when you have double the horsepower of your opponent. Weight matters less when you have the torque to twist the earth. Murder Nova proved that the soul of a race car isn't in its price tag or its pedigree, it is in the quality of the engineering. The 1974 Caprice is slow in every way that matters to a mathematician. But to a mad scientist like Sean Ellington, it was a blank canvas for 2,000 horsepower. As the Fire Donk rolls back to the pits on Street Outlaws, Endgame, the crowd doesn't just cheer, they gawk. They cannot believe what they just saw. They came expecting to see the Murder Nova, the quiet, deadly driver of the Nova, but they are leaving as witnesses to the birth of a new legend. This car forced the entire racing world to change its perspective. For the donk community, Sean's success was validation. For decades, high-riding cars were mocked as hood ornaments or slow rollers. Murder Nova strapped a rocket to that culture and shot it into the mainstream, proving that a donk can hang with, and beat, the most expensive exotics on the planet. For the Street Outlaws universe, it reset the bar. It showed that innovation wasn't just about shaving weight, it was about embracing absurdity and making it work. The final shot of the car is always the same: the top is down, the Oklahoma sun is setting, and the chrome rims are glittering. Sean "Murder Nova" Ellington sits in the driver's seat, exhausted but grinning. The '74 Caprice isn't just a car. It is a statement. It is proof that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and speed is just a matter of will. The beautiful '74 big wheel Caprice didn't just win races, it won respect. And in the gritty, tire-smoking world of street racing, that is the only trophy that matters. Murder Nova took a risk, built a masterpiece, and drove off into the sunset in a 4,000-pound middle finger to the haters. That is the true end game.